we would play to 10, and the games would last 45 minutes, and we had to give each other a point if we hit the rim. Otherwise, the game would never end. We'd still be out there 30 years later. Come on, man, just get it in there.
And you guys are both tall.
We're so bad. We were both tall. I'm 6'5". My younger brother is 6'2", and we couldn't sink a basket. My kid is better than me at basketball. Yeah. Hello, today I'm joined by Sean Harvey. He's co-host of The Kids Are Asleep, a hilarious and heartfelt podcast that he hosts with his unbelievably amazing wife, Shannon. Together, they dive into the beautiful chaos of marriage and parenting, and they share real conversations that every mom and dad can relate to. I know I do. What I love about Sean is how he brings humor and levity to the hardest parts of family life, all while modeling what it means to show up as a husband and a dad in the modern world. In this conversation, we'll talk about the messy, meaningful side of fatherhood, how to stay connected in marriage, laugh through the chaos, and raise kids with authenticity and grace. Sean, thanks so much, and welcome to Raising Men.
Thank you. I love that intro. That's flattering. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Now tell me, what first inspired you and Shannon to start The Kids Are Asleep?
So it was started during COVID, like so many things in this world.
Yeah.
We were sitting there. It's funny, like I believe we really got going in 2023, maybe 2022. It doesn't matter. But when I looked back at my iPhone at my notes, the first note was in 2020, and it was like, look into doing podcasts with wife. And I remember like seeing that like years later and going like, you know how ideas like that happen, right? It's like, it took us 3 years really to like even get serious about it.
Absolutely.
And then once we did, it was kind of a perfect storm, because I had previously done a podcast for 5 years, and so I already had an engineer, and I already had the equipment, and I had the know-how to do it. And so it was like, it just kind of took us like to figure out the format and like, how are we going to do it, and then how are we going to get my wife comfortable, get Shannon comfortable on the microphone, because she's used to doing social media, looking into the camera and kind of doing her thing, but this is a completely different monster. And so, I would say it took about 6 episodes before she got like comfortable. And we recorded a couple of little practice things, but yeah, and honestly, it came out of sitting around having drinks when the kids were asleep and cracking each other up, just laughing and just rolling over on the sofa and just, making each other laugh. And I was like, dude, do people talk like this? Like, we got to share this. I don't know if husbands and wives talk like this. And so, that's how the show was born.
Yeah. Well, you guys have, this unbelievably tremendous energy. I get the sense, for example, that if you're out in public, you guys would just be constantly giving each other shit. But if some third party wandered in and, for example, started in on you, and Shannon would be just all over that person like a chicken on a June bug.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and so there's this foundation there of we have each other's backs, but within that, we can rib each other a little. I had a relationship like that in my single days, but she and I didn't have that foundation, and so as a result, I felt like I could never relax. Like I'm walking around Fallujah, and there might be snipers on any rooftop. I didn't have a base. But go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's a unique situation, and we kind of talk about that all the time. We definitely have friends that would not consider their husband or wife to be like their best friend. Yeah. And some of them are just partners. Like I don't want to say just partners, but there are some marriages are considered more partnerships, and I think some marriages are considered more friendships. And it's just I'm not here to say what's better. this is just what works for us.
I would even argue, I would take it a step further, which is that some marriages, all marriages go through seasons. And so you'll have a season where it feels more like your partners. Especially, I
get that.
Especially when it comes to children, right? This is kind of a joint project that you're after. And to some extent, there's a real, Brownian motion towards the transactional aspect of the relationship, just kind of getting the kids to school and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's never the same story every day. Like kids will break up, though. Kids will find a way to break up your routine and give you a different thing to think about, a different struggle, a different question. And and then you don't always have the same answer.
Right.
Which is, and then sometimes like we've learned recently, I think I'm learning this more recently that I think in the past few years, our kids are 10 and 8. And I feel like as they've gotten to be like around this age, I kind of figure out like, for instance, we both can't chirp at them at the same time. So if one of us takes the lead on a thing, even if the other one doesn't agree, it's like, hey,
you back it up. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to let them cook because, you can't come in and undermine, like that's a huge conversation that we've had is, we've both at times kind of undermined each other. And then later on that night, it's like, hey, man, I said no treats, what was up with that? Now I'm the bad guy.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, the kids are ingenious, right? They're like convicts in a prison. Yes. And you're the prison guards and you have your whole life that you have to go do and all of that stuff. And the prisoners have nothing to do but to sit around and figure out how to mess with you. And that's what the kids do.
Yeah.
And if you don't have your processes down and you don't have those ground rules, like, they'll wedge you apart and they will use you against you.
Yes.
And
100%.
You can't let that happen.
How many kids do you have?
We have 2 kids. I have a 6-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl.
Nice. That's you did it the right way. You had them in the right order too.
I think so too, and it was perfectly planned that way. It could not have been any better. But my wife set it up. So she was like, "Yeah, I think I want 8 kids." And after we had the boy, she's like, "Yeah, I think I want like as many kids as we can possibly have." Yeah. And I was like, I don't know about 8, but we can go for a second.
Yeah.
And then when she got pregnant and we found out it was going to be a girl, she's like, "Okay, I'm done." So she didn't want 8 kids. What she wanted was a maximum of 8 kids, but at least one girl.
At least one girl. Yeah. If I could have guaranteed a girl, I think we would have had a third. I think it's nice to, but I couldn't. We couldn't figure that one out. So if I couldn't do 3 boys.
There. If you could somehow filter out the XY sperm or something like that, or the other way, man, that would be something.
That'd be a big money deal because you don't. I don't want 3 boys. 2 boys is enough, and the third boy running around here would just be more chaos on top of what already is.
50-50 shot at 3 boys is a problem.
Yeah. Well, and I actually a friend of mine who's a neighbor, he had 2 girls, and they just went for it again. I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but he got a boy this time, and he was like, "All right, now I'm done."
But you're kind of playing Russian roulette there. Yes. 3 of the same gender.
Yeah, that's rough.
I think the boys would be more of a problem early, though.
Yeah.
And then the girls are a problem when they turn 12, 13, 14.
Yep. You're right.
Girls,
yeah,
13,
nothing scares me to this day more than a teenage girl.
Yeah.
The way they look at you is just very unnerving for me for some reason. I just don't like it. They just
like a villain in a horror movie.
Yeah. They're very intense. They get really intense when they become teenagers. And they look at you like you don't know what you're talking about. Nothing you say is cool. None of your clothes are, like you're just dirt on the bottom of their shoe.
Right. And in their little social circles, the entire thing is about how to undercut people. And so they get really, really good at it. And,
Yeah.
it's been years since I've been in high school. I'm not used to
Yep.
that. And
Yeah.
so they're just, you're playing against Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Touche. Once again. Sorry. We have
Yeah.
sayings on the show that get abused, and Touche went through talk about a season. I went through a season of Touche. I'm going to try to stop saying it, but I said it a lot on the show, and it stuck to me now. It's like a catchphrase. It's
So,
stupid.
so tell me about, how do you balance being fully present for your kids while also making time for yourself? And that's the plural you and
Yeah.
Shannon. How do you guys manage that tension?
Well, I think the first thing that you learn when your kids get to an age where you have the freedom to do this, which, I feel like I got to about last year,
Yeah.
is you either gotta wake up before them or go to bed after them. You need some time while they're sleeping to get stuff done. So whether it's waking up early and going to the gym, and then coming home and getting them to school, whether it's that or whether it's on the weekends when they go to bed 9, 10 o'clock. It's like I need at least an hour. We need to watch a show. We need to decompress. We need to do something. We are not like, we have friends that are busybodies, right?
Yeah.
They do 5 events in a day. They get home at 10 o'clock. They go straight in the shower, straight into bed. We don't do that. We can't do that. We have to like have a time to like relax, watch whatever, viral stupidness is on, or like a good drama, a good thriller, a scary
Yeah.
movie, something. We got to watch something, decompress, and and then talk and enjoy each other's time, and then yeah. But you got to make some time without them to figure out what you guys are, like what the marriage is, what your roles are, what your relationship is going to be. And I think we try to do that every day.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of my friends, they go like every day, and I'm like yeah, like pretty much every day, unless I like go out, hang out with my friends or something. Like it's a pretty. And she says the same thing, that her friends, they go, you guys like really sit down every day and hang out. And I'm like, yeah, we sit down every day for the most part, because I don't know, yeah, it's that's just how we've structured our lives, and that's how it works for us.
Well, and I mean, if you don't do that, you're risking it all. I think you're just going to lose your connection with each other,
Yeah,
and you'll start to veer off course, right? And
yeah,
you know, and then what are you doing? It's
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah, you don't want to. I don't ever want to. Like, we're rarely ever caught by surprise. Like if something happens in my life or in her life separately, she's gonna be the first person I call. And
Yeah.
vice versa. And especially because we have the show. The only exception to that is that if something funny happens, like the other day, she saw a car accident, right? So she starts
Yeah.
telling me, and I go, save it for the show. Like save it for the show. Tell me. I can't, because I want to react to this live. I want to react
Yeah.
to this when we're recording, so we can get those kind of authentic moments. So there are some things that we hold, but only for the show. But besides that, the day to day stuff, we're in constant communication, and I think once again, people of our circumstance, she's worked from home almost the whole time we've been together, right?
Yeah.
So she has been here in the house from you sun up. It used to be she had to get up at 5 and be on corporate calls in the morning, and
Right.
then but she'd always be here, right? So then and
Yeah.
I would leave and I would go out and I used to work at a car dealership and did odds and ends, right? So I would do this, and then I started my podcast, and then I started working from home, and then so ever since like 2016,
Hmm.
we have been in the house together most of the day, except for like when we go out and run errands or go to the gym, right? So
Yeah.
you get used to each other, and once we figured out how not to kill each other,
Right.
and once we figured out like, okay, I need space at this time, I need to go up, I need to close the door, I need to go to the office, or this, like we totally, once you figure that out, then it's we spend a lot of time together, and it works for us. It wouldn't work
It's
for
like
everybody.
growing a beard. Like there's that uncomfortable moment where, as it's growing out, you're like, oh man, I hate this. I don't think I can do it. And then I'm told it's never happened to me. And you have an amazing beard.
I
Once you
wish.
get past that, it's
Yeah.
kind of glorious.
Yeah, you're right. It's I've tried to manicure this a little bit better, but the one of the rules in my house is if my wife likes it, I love it. And
Yeah,
so she says the bushier the better. And I'm like, all right, like I stopped buying colognes and things like that for myself a long time ago. Like it doesn't matter if I
absolutely.
like the way it smells. It's does she like the way it smells? Because
That's exactly
I
right.
don't why I want to get in the car and she looks at me like, ugh.
That's the
Like
last
I
thing
don't.
you want.
So it's yeah, she likes it, so I love it.
Yep. And then I will just optimize for whatever it is that she wants.
Yes, there are certain things that I'm willing. I'll be like my fashion. Once again I've learned who do I want to think I look good? Is it my male friends? Is it women I'd never met before? Or is it the person that I live with? You know what I mean? So some
Exactly.
like some guys they'll go, "Oh, why you wear those short shorts?" I go, "Cause you know what? My wife likes me in them. That's why."
Yep. And maybe there is a conflict of interest there, but that's okay.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But I don't know what her agenda is. Maybe she wants me to look stupid so nobody else will want me. Who knows?
Exactly. And if that's the deal, all right, well then I'll play along. It's no
Yeah,
problem.
exactly. Because guess what? You're even more stuck with me in that case. So whatever.
that's that's exactly right because you crafted this woman.
Yes, yes, yeah. Now nobody wants me. You're stuck with me. I'm here.
Yeah. Now you had a rather unorthodox childhood, which is something that you and I have in common. How
Yeah.
did that help shape who you became as a man, and how did it help shape you as a parent?
That that's funny. That's a really in-depth good question. So my father was a dream chaser, right? My father was lead guitar for a band called Toots and the Maytals. They've won 2 Grammys over the years. He's performed on late night television. He's performed all over the world. I think he's been around the
So cool.
world seven times.
Wow.
And so I got to see what mastery looked like.
Yeah.
I got to see what, following your passion looked like. But I also got to experience the sacrifices that entails,
Yeah.
right? So when you are chasing your dream like that, when you're a man like him who is obsessed with your craft, his family life struggled. And so my earliest memories, he wasn't around, right? He was around in terms of he was never incommunicado. Like I could always get a hold of my dad. When he was around, I would spend time with him, but he was traveling 200 days out of the year. And so I lived with my mom, and they broke up pretty shortly after I was born.
Yeah.
And so I got to experience both sides of that, and that affected me. So I used to do music, and I used to also do music, and I chased that, and I was good at it. And I remember my wife had a medical situation, and when that happened, I remembered sitting there and realizing like if I'm going to chase this, I'm going to have to be out all the time. I'm going to have
Yeah.
to be in the clubs and in the bars, and I'm going to have to be promoting myself, and I'm going to have to do that all the time if I want to get where I want to go. And then I just realized, no disrespect to my dad, but I just realized I was like, what's more important to me is that I didn't want to sacrifice what he sacrificed. I
Hmm.
wanted to pick something and do something that I was going to be available for my kids and my wife, and that I wasn't just going to be a journeyman on the road and they'd have to call me and FaceTime me. And, that was so I think watching him, he won Grammys, he did a lot of great things, but it didn't come without a price. And I felt like ultimately that's how that affected me was that I said, you know what? The fame and fortune is not necessarily the number one thing for me. I would rather be there for my family and then figure
Yeah.
out the rest with that being the foundation.
Yeah. My dad was a world class sportscaster.
Yes.
He was the local sports guy on NBC and then ABC in Los Angeles and then on
That's amazing.
NBC in Dallas. And I mean at the time he did play by play for the Cowboys and for
Yeah.
the Dodgers. I have this great story that he came to visit me here in San Diego about 6 years ago, and we went out for lunch,
Yeah.
and we were one of two guests in the restaurant. The other table was Troy Aikman and a friend of
Oh,
his, strangely
yeah.
enough. Now, my dad covered Troy in Los Angeles when Troy was at USC. And then again, Troy moved to Dallas. We basically moved to Dallas around the same time. And so covered him
Yeah.
in the Cowboys too. And so they
Sweet.
were acquainted with each other. And I'd met Troy when I was very young. And so we went
Yeah.
over there and said hi and all of that stuff. And when we left, our waiter came to our table and said, or when it was time to pay, our waiter came over and said, all right, so I guess you know those guys? And Dad said, yeah, I used to be a sportscaster and all that. He says, well, Troy Aikman paid for your lunch.
Yeah.
And like, that's pretty cool.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I bet
And
you
it was a
experienced.
class act for Aikman to do. And
Yeah.
it was a pretty cool nod to my dad, for, his history there. And, but yeah, so but he would go to work at 2:00 in the afternoon. He'd come home at 2:00 in the morning. He
Yeah.
traveled a lot. It was his career was his primary focus, and that's what
Yeah.
it took.
Yeah.
And he was excellent. He ended up in Palm Springs. He was sort of semi-retired at the time, and he was doing entertainment reporting. And Sonny Bono died.
Yeah.
He died in a skiing accident. And Sonny Bono had been the mayor of Palm Springs. He lived there, and it was a big deal in Palm Springs. So my dad ended up in the situation of doing play-by-play for the funeral, essentially. And it was like watching grass grow. It was just so, Cher came in on a private jet, and the door opened, and then 5 minutes later she walked down. I mean, it was just every mind-numbing slow detail of every little thing that happened, and they were watching it live, and he sat there for 8 hours doing this play-by-play of this funeral that was so painstakingly slow, and it
Yeah.
was interesting. And
Yeah.
I realized that is a skill.
Yep.
Making something that boring be that interesting is amazing. And that was actually the first time I realized that's excellence. And it took him 50 years, right, to
Yeah.
craft that. And it cost him, and it cost us as a family, but it also had rewards associated with it too,
course.
right? I got to watch the Dodger games from the dugout
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I didn't appreciate it when I was a kid, but
See,
it was a great
yeah,
job.
I was going to ask you that, like, if you had experiences that jaded you, because I experienced that same thing. I went to a million shows when my dad was, when I was much younger, and I couldn't tell you who was there. To be honest with you, I did not know who my dad was until I was about 16. I just moved to Portland. I came from Toronto. I grew up in Toronto. We moved. My mom met a man, married him. He lived in Portland, so we moved out to Portland, and I believe '99. And I remember going to school, and I'm talking to these random kids. It's I go to Lincoln High School. It's a very white high school. I'm like one of like a couple of black kids. I'm talking to this kid. I have don't know him from Adam, and he goes, "Your name's Sean Harvey?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Any relation to Carl Harvey?" And I look at him and I'm like, how would you possibly know who my dad is? Like,
Yeah.
how do you? Oh man, Toots and the Maytals, man, they're big out here. Like and unbeknownst to me, there's like this huge reggae scene in Portland, and I'd only been to like
Wow.
shows. A lot of Jamaican folks in Toronto, so whenever he would do shows, it was mostly a Caribbean audience, right? And
Yeah.
so I don't know if these are his friends or I don't know who these people are, right?
Right.
I'm 8. The music's too loud. It's annoying. There's smoke everywhere. I'm like, I hate this, right?
Yeah.
And so he comes to Portland on tour, and he would come about twice a year to Portland because it was a big market for them. And lo and behold, I would go to his shows, and then I'm like, oh, once I saw like an all white crowd dancing and singing every word to these songs, and then my dad would get his guitar solo, and he would like play the guitar with his teeth, and he'd play it behind his
Yeah.
back, and he'd play it behind his head, and I was just like, oh, this dude is somebody, like this people like know who this guy is, and that was a unique experience for me to like experiencing what he did on two different coasts and in two
Yeah.
different countries, and then going like, oh, this travels this far, like people over here also know him. People from his city wasn't impressive. I'm like, everybody, right?
Right.
Everyone,
Yeah. You're a
but
friendly guy.
yeah, you know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
what I thought. And then, so then when I traveled across the continent, and then people still were like, oh, your dad, yeah. And then I was like, oh, and so, yeah, it was, and like you said, I then got to see him with new eyes when he would perform. And I got to understand, like, oh, this is why he sits around. He practices like every day. Like if he stays at my house, sometimes he'll come here and he'll stay with me, and he'll stay in the guest room, and you'll walk by the room. It's 1 and 2 in the morning, and you'll just hear the guitar. He's got his
Wow.
headphones in, and he's still working on his craft. He's still, and I realized, when you learn about the Beatles and the 10,000 hours, and it's like
Yeah.
when you learn that, and when you're growing up, you realize like, oh, that's what that looks like, the 10,000 hours, and it really for some people it's 10 million hours.
Well, and it's
It's
not. It's 10,000 hours, but that's not like it's not like when the 10,000th hour is there, you're there. You have to
yeah,
maintain that pace.
yes,
It's
yeah,
it's it's a pace of 10,000 hours, not the
exactly,
actual 10,000 hours.
exactly.
Yeah, it's yeah. That's an interesting. I mean, it's such an interesting challenge and a tension between being able to experience your dad and understanding what that excellence requires, but that
Hmm.
he has that excellence, and you have to revere that. But then you
Yeah,
also have to acknowledge that it came at a cost, and it's not a cost that you would be willing to pay, or it's not a
Ye-
cost maybe even as your child you might have resented him for paying that.
yeah. I think a little bit from time to time, but I think our dads grew up in a time where I feel like I do feel like it's you. We've kind of like we've emailed and stuff, and I think that the point of this podcast seems to be confronting fatherhood in this era, right? And
Exactly.
it is so different than when they grew up. When they grew up, when our dads and our granddads grew up, it was like provide, don't complain, and be good at something,
Yeah.
and then and don't complain, like number,
Yeah. Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
complain, and don't talk too much, and so I do think that we were all kind of, none of us really knew what our dads were going through and how they were handling the stress of what they had to deal with. And it was just acceptable to, if you were accomplishing something, a family was a noble sacrifice for the greater achievement. Depending on where you are, obviously, I'm not trying to put everybody in that box,
That's
but
right.
for a lot of people, they get really career driven, and that comes first. And I feel like part of me watching that and seeing that, and I just kind of figured, you know what, with the technology the way it is today, with all the different accesses that we have to monetization and expression and social media, I just thought, you know what, let me try to find a balance, and maybe that can be the next thing, is dads that kind of figure out, parents that figure out how to have a balance between success and money and all that comes with that, but then also like not having a generation of young kids that are running around. These kids these days have, my biggest trouble when there was no supervision was I could only go as far as my bike would take me.
That's right.
But as far as my bike got me in a day, that's as much trouble as I can get into. right?
Exactly.
And nowadays, a kid can get on his phone and communicate with somebody halfway around the world, and then grab dad's credit card or grab mom's debit card and and empty out a bank account and not even know what they're
Terrifying.
doing.
That's
Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah.
yeah. So it's, I think we have to be more present because there's so much more threats out there that kids have to deal with that our generation didn't even exist.
It might as well have been science fiction. It's so far
Exactly.
outside the bounds of what we could have even imagined existed. I mean, look at Back to the Future. Back to the Future 2, when he goes into the future, that was
Yes,
that was our vision
that was our
of
vision.
what the future was going to be.
Yeah.
And it didn't envision social media or the internet
Yeah, I was
or
gonna
a
say they
bunch
didn't
of
have any social media in that. They couldn't even have pictured it.
yeah. And those things come with opportunities. There are
Yep.
now classes of careers that didn't
Yeah.
exist because of
Yeah.
that. But it
Yep.
also comes with serious risk. And you have to open your eyes and deal with both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And balance. I think that's just the key is finding it and understanding that it's a difficult journey to go on, is to find a balance between, how do you nature, how do you nurture, but then also, how do you navigate this new stuff? Because, I mean, I've these like I stopped playing certain games with my kids a long time ago.
Hmm.
I can still beat them in chess, but I can't beat them in any video game. Like I can't beat them in
Right?
anything that requires typing or any joystick stuff. Like their hand-eye
They're
reflexes.
born
It's
into
you
it.
know it's out of this world. Like yeah, they are so much more technically savvy. Except for the fact that whenever something breaks, somehow they can't figure out turn it off and on. They always got to come ask me. Like I work for Sony. They're like, oh, the
Right.
PlayStation's not. I go, dude, I don't know. Turn it off
Have
and
you
then
tried
turn
turning it
it
off and
back
on again?
on.
That's literally the
Yeah.
first step of any troubleshooting.
And then every time they go, oh, okay, thanks, Dad. And I'm like, dude, I just was having the time of my life downstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. You ruined it.
Yeah, it seems like you were really fortunate to have a great stepfather.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
did.
you recently had an episode where you talked about losing him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is a milestone, a really, really significant milestone in anybody's life.
Yeah.
I'm so interested to talk to you about how you dealt with that loss with your kids. How did you handle that?
So that morning, my mom called me, and I knew before I even answered the phone, right? Because she called me at a time where I was like, it's bad news time, right? This isn't like a social call.
Yeah, yeah, you don't call
And
at that
so,
time if
yeah, you don't call that early in the
yeah.
morning on a Sunday morning and not have bad news. So I answered she told me obviously, and then first I just lay there for a bit and kind of processed. And then of course, yeah, like after about 30 seconds I go, okay, now I got to tell the kids.
Hmm.
And they weren't up yet. So I just went downstairs. I kind of, got something to drink. And then the kids came down and my wife was still sleeping. And so I just remember thinking to myself, like, how long can I go? Like, how long should I let them? Because, like, right now, their life is totally normal,
Hmm.
right? Right now, they don't know anything's up. And how long do I let that go? And then I just, I got a text from somebody else. And as the text messages started coming in, then I said, all right, I gotta rip the Band-Aid, because I don't want them to find out any other way. And so I brought them, I sat them on the couch and I just told them that their grandpa had passed away, and they both started crying, and it was like it definitely was a first. It's their first experience with death, of a close family member, of a family member maybe, period.
Yeah,
And I definitely was conscious of the fact that I was like, oh, my life just changed.
yeah,
You're like, I've just, like you said, this is a milestone. Like, I'm now comforting them through something that they've never experienced. So, I got to be strong, but also be present. And then we're gonna have to navigate the situation. And I think my older son took it a lot harder because obviously he's just a little more aware. He's 10, and he's a mature 10. You know, he's not a regular 10-year-old like this guy. He walks around. You know, you think he's wearing a business suit. Like he's a very serious person. And so, you know, and his younger brother, you know, he's kind of like more trying to find his emotions. I feel like.
Yeah.
You know, he's trying to figure out like, okay, I can see people are. He definitely cried at first, but then I kind of saw him at the funeral. You know, he's like looking around. He's trying to figure out like, how should I emote? You know, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. You
Yeah,
know, like
he's trying to figure out cues. He's looking around and
yeah,
saying,
yeah. He's trying to
how do
look at
people
all of
deal with
us.
it?
You know, and in his defense, there's a family picture that my mom has up to this day in her office of when I believe my grandma passed away. I believe I was 5 of my mom's mom in Jamaica. So my mom is one of 14. So there's a picture with my granddad and the 14 siblings, and then all their kids that could fit. Like, we were all in one room, right?
Amazing.
And then there's a picture, and then I believe, one of the youngest, if not, I think I was like second or third youngest,
Wow.
and I am in the picture sticking my tongue out to the camera.
That's perfect.
You know what I mean? So I get it that, like, you know, at a certain age, it's not real. You don't know how to process it. You
Yeah,
just don't get it. And then, you know, when I was 11, my mom's common law. You know, you're familiar with common law husband
I am.
and wife,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, if
That's
you've
a
lived
I
together
don't.
for long enough, the state
Yeah,
recognizes you as husband and wife.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if that's even a thing still. You know, but it was a thing when
It's
I
got to
was a
be.
kid.
I'm sure the laws are still there. I don't know if, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it
right.
seems more
So
applicable
so
today than it
my
used to
mom's
be.
boyfriend, they were together for over 7 years. You know, they lived together, and so
Yeah.
he was her common law husband, and he passed away when I was 11, and it was very similar because my older son had a game the next day, and I remember I had a basketball game the next day when he passed away, and I remember both times, you know, like my mom said, you know, he'd want you to play, and then my mom told my we told my mom, oh, I don't know if we're gonna go to the game today, and she says, nope, Chuck would want you to play. You know, he would not like anything to stop on his account.
Yeah.
So she was like, go out there and have a, you know, and that's just so that was me and him. We have this like weird experience now that we've both kind of lived through. That's very,
Yeah.
you know, but you know, and it's a valuable lesson of like feel it, experience it, but also, you know, and it'd be fine if he said I'm not going to play. If he
Yeah.
said I
Of
can't
course.
do it, I wouldn't have pushed him.
Yeah.
But I gave him the option, and he said, yeah, let's do it.
The day after
And he
I
had a
lost
hell of
my
a game.
mom, I went to work. I was
Yeah,
working as a video game developer at a company
yeah,
in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
yeah,
And I went to work that day,
yeah,
and actually, I got to my desk, and the guy who was organizing the softball team for our work came up to give me shit about not being at the game the preceding night.
yeah,
And I'm at my desk, and I kind of knew I had no business being there. Like, who goes to work the day after their parent dies?
yeah,
And but that's what I need. I needed to have some kind of normalcy. I needed to, like, that's what I needed to do in order to process this situation.
yeah,
That's what I needed. And I'm sitting at my desk, and this guy is just like absolutely pounding on me because, you know, you signed up for the game and you said that you would be there, blah blah blah, and all this stuff. And I'm just thinking to myself, this poor bastard
yeah,
has no idea what he's in
yeah,
for. This
yeah,
poor, and then like he kind of kept at it, and then I started to feel bad, and I said, "You know what? My mom died last night."
yeah.
And then I walked away, and I heard
Ugh.
him turn to the guy who was in the cubicle across from me, and say, "Is he serious right now?"
Yeah,
And my cubicle mate said, "Yeah." And I didn't talk to him for the rest of the day. He just avoided me,
of
and they
course.
apologized the next day. But I just remember feeling at that both of those feelings are so strong to me. I remember them so vividly. About number one, feeling like it just felt like the thing I needed to do in order to process
Yeah,
this was go to work, which was just weird.
Yeah.
and then dealing with, and then having this guy just wail on me and feeling this empathy for this guy because, man, he's going to remember this forever too. About the time that he just wouldn't let it go. And
I love that about you. I think if you lived here, we would be fast friends because I love that you could see that's how I process things very much through humor.
yeah,
And I would be thinking the exact same thing. I'd be thinking to myself like this dude, you know what I mean? Like the pit that's about to be in his stomach is just
yeah,
I'm about to ruin this guy's day. And I got
yeah, and
options.
I'm going to love it.
Yes. I have
This is going to be the
options on
best
how
part of my
bad.
day right
Yeah,
here.
man. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's and yeah, that's I think that's beautiful. I think that's the way that I don't know, that's just been my coping mechanism, it hasn't always been like this, but I think that, especially since we started the show, it's like I've just kind of learned like, laughing things, don't be I'm not silly. I'm an adult, I'm not a silly person, but I can be very silly and I can kind of laugh off most things because I don't know, that's just how I deal with things, and my wife
Yeah.
is similar. She can deal with some trauma and then make a joke 5 minutes later, and that she I think I got that from her.
I
Like
feel like
she,
you guys manage that tension so well. This tension between
yeah,
seriousness and levity. You're somehow able to joke about the serious thing that helps it retain its seriousness.
yeah,
And I mean, like, so an example of that is I loved when you shared your final interaction with your stepdad.
yeah,
It was, it felt so poignant. It was because you shared it and you were kind of joking about the whole situation, and you shared the fact that you had this wonderful interaction with him after it was almost like in retrospect, he understood that these were his final days, and so he had a renewed vigor and renewed energy, and you had this final interaction with him that gave you peace after he was gone.
yeah,
And you managed that tension between the levity and the seriousness so well with that story. I suspect that Charlie would be really proud of that and about
yeah,
the space that he occupies in your mind. I
yeah.
just
I
I
think
love that.
I think that he, it's funny. We didn't like have like a really talky relationship. Like we didn't talk a lot. We didn't like ever like shoot the shit. We just like he'd call me when
Right.
he needed like tech support. Like when the
Yeah,
when
yeah,
the
turn it off and on
VCR.
again, Charlie.
Yeah, 100%. It was, it's I got the 8-year-old and then I have the 80-year-old, right? And so it's like
Right.
it's similar questions from both, right?
Yep.
And so I used to always like, I'd go install it, put up a TV in his house and then kind of walk him through this and that and so but he very much was like an old, I mean, he was 80, 86, 85 when he passed away. He was an old school guy.
Yeah.
And so his communication wasn't the greatest either, but I think he would have. I feel like so. I wrote my speech that I gave at his funeral the day before. I kind of was spitballing some stuff, and my
Mhm.
mom told me, she said, "Look, they asked me to speak. I can't do it. So could you speak for me?" And I said,
Mhm.
"Yeah, of course."
Yeah.
Once again, milestone, right? It's like, oh God, now this is the first time my mom is now asking me to be the strong one, right?
Yeah.
She's always been the
Wow.
strong one.
What a unbelievable moment. That is such a coming of age threshold, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah,
Wow.
which is not, you don't think about this stuff when you're in your 20s. You don't think
Mm-mm.
about, you think, oh, I can drink alcohol now. Now I'm a man, like, I
Yeah.
can vote. I can shoot a gun, like this stuff makes me a man. It's like you ain't got no idea.
You ain't got no
So
idea.
she asked me, I say yes, and then I am the kind of person that I don't know if you ever read there's two books that I've read. There's 48 Laws of Power and The Art of Seduction. I don't remember which book this is in,
Yeah, I've
but
read both of those. Yeah.
okay, and they tell a story of a guy that he had to design a home, and he basically he couldn't he's commissions gets all this money, and he's got nothing. So then he ends up calling a meeting, and he gets everybody, the investors and the guy who's commissioned the home, he gets everybody involved, and he's still got nothing. And then finally, it comes to him like as they're on the way to the house, right, for this meeting, And I don't remember exactly who it entailed, but the point is, that's me. I do it the day before, not because I'm lazy, but because pressure is my motivator.
Yeah.
If I have 2 weeks to do something, I'm not going to do it as well as if I do it, obviously that time permitting, right? If I can do it the day
Yeah.
before, I will. And so I say all that to say that I was spitballing some stuff, and the day before the funeral, it just came to me.
Yeah.
And it's like a weird thing to like figure someone out, after they pass away. And so I'm writing this speech, and I figure out, he was a lawyer. He was a very inquisitive guy. He used to drive me crazy, always asking questions. Like when I was a teenager and I meet this guy, he's marrying my mom. He just won't shut up with the questions. And then as I'm writing the speech, I realized like this dude just wanted the best for everybody. And so that's why he was always asking questions. He always wanted to know, what was your plan? How are you going to execute it? What do you need to do? What's not done yet? Have you done this? Have you done that? And it always drove me crazy. And then I realized, like, this is what I do to my kids every day.
Yeah.
This is constantly what I'm doing to my kids, and it's just like, then I go, oh shit, this guy just wanted me to be the best person that I could be. And that's what he wanted for everybody.
He was willing to be kind of the asshole.
Yes.
He was constantly asking you and pressuring you to be better.
Yeah.
He was doing you that service by being the asshole.
And if he didn't like me, he wouldn't have talked to me.
Right.
Like he just wouldn't say anything.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I thought he didn't like me. There's a lot of years where I thought he didn't like me, but you realize like, no, he's just from a generation where this is just how they talk to people. Like this is, he's not asking me about my feelings. He's not asking me about like how I feel about this or that. He's asking me about like my do this, do that, and it's just like that was so it was an interesting mental exercise to like sit down with a pen and paper and then get to know somebody that just passed away. Like really get to know him better. I got to know him better while I wrote that speech than I think I ever did while he was alive.
There's such a lesson there too, and it's a shame, right?
Yeah.
That you didn't manage to do that exercise when you had a chance to tell him about what you realized.
Exactly.
And so I wonder how we cultivate that in our own kids. Like, I don't want that to happen. I don't want my boy to finally realize who I am.
Yeah.
When he's doing that.
Yeah.
And I wonder how to cultivate it. Raising Men is produced by Phil Hernandez. This episode was edited by Ralph Tolentino.